What did you think Surrey police were actually going to do?
Check the police records. And I thought that in my heart of hearts. It's at least three, maybe four times it makes reference to police checks, intelligence checks. And that's what I wanted. I wanted that insight to know, is this guy known? And if I had four things I could have asked, is he known to the police? How old is he? Where does he really work? And where does he really live? Mostly I wanted to know, is he known to the police? Because I didn't trust him.
And so you were left thinking they were going to go away and make those inquiries. And what effect did that have on you? Were you
Relieved. I was hugely relieved. I was looking forward to getting, answers, because I felt hopeless as a parent, like so many parents do, every day. They feel helpless and they don't know what to do because it's such a difficult new area in parenting.
I think a couple of days after that call to the police, you then organised what you call as an intervention type meeting with some, you hoped, parents of the other boys that had been involved in the online gaming. I think in fact it ended up being just you, Breck's dad, Breck, the vicar, and one other boy and that boy's parents. What was the aim of the intervention?
To get to the bottom of the relationship with LD and who he was.
And did you ask other boys' parents to attend?
I asked the other parents that I had the phone numbers of if we could invite more parents in. Because he was the vicar, he knew the community, and a lot of the boys met up there on a Sunday afternoon for sort of a debate series. But he didn't want anyone else involved and said, we'll just take care of it ourselves.
Okay. Hence the smaller numbers at the meeting.
Because there were several boys locally that could have been there at the meeting too, but I didn't have access to their numbers.
And so did you sit down with Breck and his friend and speak of your concerns about what was going on?
Yeah, we said we don't know who he is. We don't really believe all of his stories. We were trying to sort of say it in a grown-up way. We weren't, yelling. We were trying to make them open up, and they couldn't defend him enough. He's a good guy. He looks after us. He teaches us things. He's our friend. He gets us. We have a good time. We have a laugh. We're learning to code and encrypt. And it was all that building of that relationship. They felt they were in a real friendship with him.
I think you said, well, that all sounds well and good. So can we meet him then? And what response did that provoke from the boys?
The boys said, he will never meet any of you. He thinks all parents are too judgmental. And at that point, we looked at each other, the parents, and we said, well, we're going to have to forbid you from gaming or speaking or socializing to him then, because we just don't know who he is. The boys then reluctantly agreed and said they would go to another server with some other guys from school. And we thought we fixed the problem.
Yeah. Now, did you subsequently come to learn that, in fact, Breck had recorded the intervention on, I think, an MP3 player?
When I took away all of his technology, I missed this little MP3 player, and LD instructed him to record that meeting. LD is then now onto us, knows that we're onto him, knows that we're suspecting him of all sorts of things, and it became that much more dangerous because it went underground then.
Yeah. Now, of course, you didn't know that. So at the end of the intervention, the boys have been forbidden from going onto LD's gaming site. They've agreed to do their gaming elsewhere. Breck hasn't got access to his computer equipment for the next few days at the very least, certainly in the run-up to Christmas of that year. And as far as you knew at that stage, how did you feel about the intervention and its success or otherwise?
Well, I felt strong in the fact that it wasn't just me that agreed. The other parents all agreed that it did sound like a worry. And I felt strong that we were sort of united, and the boys didn't say they wouldn't do it. They didn't refuse. They agreed to go to the other server, and so I felt relieved that I had fixed the problem, and even talked to Breck about it. And at the end of the week, when he got his equipment back, we talked about it again, saying, okay, you know where you're going to go. You're going to be with your friends from school, but not with LD, and it all seemed fine.
And indeed, I think you said in your statement at paragraph 10 that actually at around this time, so the end of 2013, beginning of 2014, Breck went Breck went back to his normal self.
Absolutely. There were no more fighting back about chores or church or LD says this or LD says that. It was as if he just bounced back into normality and wasn't causing any sort of distress at bedtimes or, when I wanted him to get off the computer, it was as if he went back to his normal self.
I think as an aside, you said that in late January of 2014, Breck actually had an e-safety assembly at school. Did he tell you anything about how the assembly went?
Well, when he came home from school, because I was still aware of it, I had been listening out for LD's voice, that deep and distinctive voice. I had been listening, looking for a picture, a new picture, an old picture, a new gamer, anything, and everything seemed fine, but I was still aware, and so I asked him how the e-safety assembly went, and he just, so boring, Mom, so boring, and he rolled his eyes, and this is why, I do the work that I do and speak at schools. The last thing we want to do is bore our children with these safety messages. He didn't take anything in that day, and I don't even know if they talked about grooming. I don't think that they advanced in their warnings from when he was young. And if with young children, if they constantly hear, don't give out your name or your age or where you go to school, it's not progressive enough for the teenagers who will have exchanged those sorts of pieces of information at that point.
Unbeknownst to you, whilst there was a seemingly return to the normal Breck had in fact been sent by LD a brand new iPhone, which was couriered to him. That was unbeknownst to you or indeed Breck's dad?
No, I didn't know. And, Breck would have been thrilled, any teenager would be thrilled being sent a gift of a 600-pound brand new phone, and I didn't know he had it.
Breck then went on a Spanish exchange trip in the February half-term of 2014. And I just want to ask you about what happened the night before he left to go on that trip. Did you spend some time with Breck that evening?
Yes, but I have one more thought on January. I found out later that the other parents found their son back online with LD after we forbade them. They kicked him back off and said, no, we said, we don't want you hanging out with this guy. But they didn't contact me. Right. And I think that's really important to note that these, even parents, don't know how to protect each other in the community because they just thought, well, I'll just protect my son and kick him back off. And they didn't consider letting me know that the person I had alerted them to was indeed after their son still, so possibly after mine. So I think that's something we try to share. It's not just about educating the child. The parents have to be educated as well through school. So, thank you. February, we spent the night before his Spanish exchange trip in his room, packing and hanging out and talking. I was excited for him because I thought this was a great chance to spend face-to-face, old-fashioned face-to-face time with his school friends. And growing up in the States, I hadn't gone on such a big trip at his age, and I was pleased for him. He was a little bit preoccupied with his computer. Looking back, at the time I thought, well, that's just Breck. He's obsessed with computing and technology. It wasn't just the gaming, it was how it all worked. He wanted to work in that field, and he was working on his computer that night before he left. In the morning, everything was fine. We hugged and kissed and said we loved each other, and he even was getting a lift to the airport. He was quite independent, and he was, could get himself around London, and, he was quite confident for a 14-year-old boy. As he walked away, I was proud because he was going for what he wanted more than I even knew in the technology field, and he joined Air Cadets because he wanted to be a pilot. I never expected that to be the last time I would see him alive.
And I think Breck then spent the week in Spain, and again, not that you knew this at the time, in fact, LD had been pursuing Breck online whilst he was abroad in Spain.
Yes.
And I think he was sending messages to Breck, trying to divert his attention away from his school friends. And in particular, there came a point whilst Breck was away that he posted a photo on Facebook of himself with a girl.
Yeah.
And LD did not like the photo and seeing Breck with the girl, and demanded Breck to take the photo down.
Yes.
Now, all of that was going on without your knowledge.
No. And I think, too, you're thinking of PSHE lessons being so important within schooling. Even this was a healthy relationship issue. Breck wasn't recognizing that this guy was obsessed with him, you know, not letting him spend time with school friends, not liking that he had time with his family, and he was constantly trying to pull him away from everyone else. And I think, you know, I think back, didn't I teach him about a healthy relationship, being able to have several friends, not just focused on one, but LD sent him a nonstop sort of barrage of messages, ramping up really, you know, first just saying, give me a call me back, up to, you know, I've got some great news, I've really got to tell you something, wait till you find out how my company's really taken off, we're so successful now, I'm going to need to take someone else on board, you could be that guy, the other ones aren't as clever as you, you're the clever one, you're going to be successful beyond your wildest dreams, leading to, all you need to do is come to my flat, and I'll explain everything. And so when Breck posted that picture on Facebook, very unusual, because that's where I used to hang out, Breck never went there, LD couldn't stand it, and just, I guess, almost insanely jealous. He didn't want Breck to have this girlfriend.
The trip ended on, I think, the Saturday, and that was a weekend that Breck was due to stay at his dad's. So when he came home from Spain, he went along with the triplets, is that right?
Yeah.
To his dad's for the weekend. And were you about to leave the country to go on your own trip?
Technically, they were all staying at my house because his dad didn't have a proper house at the time. So technically they were at my house, but I left for that period so that,
I see.
Because his dad's, the millionaire in the media was living in a house-sit kind of place, and he only had one room, and she didn't want 4 children over there plugging all their phones in. So he kind of snuck to my house so that the kids could be more comfortable and she wouldn't get mad at him.
So it was Breck's dad's weekend, but they actually spent it at your
at
house.
Mine,
right?
But I was...
And you'd gone.
I was away.
Fine.
And so, yes. So he picked them up from the airport, and then they were at my house.
At your house. Okay. All right. And I think it was when Breck got home that he asked his dad if he could go to his friends from school to work on some computers, and Breck's dad said yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I think you found out later that that was a lie suggested by LD.
There was a huge made-up story of a lie suggested by LD that I wish Breck had used, because it was so preposterous that I think his dad would have read through it, but instead Breck just easily said, I'm just going to go to my school friend Tom's house, and he had 2 Tom friends, so it was a usual thing for him to say.
Yeah, so no questions were asked or eyebrows
because
raised.
Breck was usually a good boy. He didn't usually do anything that you would suspect him of lying about.
And as I think, as you said in your statement, Breck was picked up at 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday the 16th of February by a taxi that LD in fact had booked and paid for and taken to LD's property in Essex.
Pre-booked 2 weeks in advance.
Without wishing to upset you, Miss LaFlave, on Monday the 17th...
Can I say something about the 16th?
Of course you can.
2 adults saw Breck get into that taxi at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And once again, because he was a good boy without vulnerabilities, without being known as a naughty child, nobody questioned him, because at that point somebody should have said, where are you going? And both of these adults knew that I was being concerned that he was being groomed. They both knew I had phoned the police. I had made a big deal about it. I'm quite a vocal, verbal person. And they didn't think to say or do anything. And it just shows that when a child is not presenting themselves as vulnerable, people don't believe that they may still have vulnerabilities.
Or ask question marks about why a 14-year-old's getting into a cab at 7 in the morning.
Yeah.